I'm here with Susan. Hello,
Hel-
Susan.
Hello.
This is a podcast about everything at the intersection of humans and technology. And we have a fun guest today that Susan is going to introduce. So
Yeah, we
take it
have
away.
Dean Barker joining us today. Dean is he's an everything. He's a UX consultant and a product consultant and a technology consultant, multiple degrees. He and I go back way longer than I'm even going to mention the year of. We'll just say that we've been working together in one way or another over the years on many different interesting projects. We especially have fun when it comes to talking about systems and processes for doing design and for doing user experience. And one of the reasons we wanted to bring him on today onto the podcast is I want to talk about his new book. So he has written a book called, I'm looking down at it. I would hold it up, but isn't it backwards if I hold it up?
Yeah, but it doesn't
All right,
matter.
I'll hold it up anyway, just so you can see the
People
colors.
can put
How's
this
that?
podcast into a mirror and then they
There
can
you
see.
go.
That's it.
It's called Advance, and the subtitle is How to Move Your Business Forward with Design Strategy. So, welcome, Dean, to our podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I'm glad to be here, and it's awesome to see you guys again.
And it's not your first time on our podcast.
No.
But it's the first time you've been on to talk about the book. So I have lots of questions about the book. Yes,
Everyone has lots of questions.
Yeah.
Do we want to start with questions about the content of the book, or start about questions about the creation of the book? Because we want to talk about both. And
You want to talk about creation, and I want to talk
I
about
can talk
content.
about everyone. I can talk
All
about
right.
content too.
Guthrie, you start with creation, and then I'll
Okay.
get into content.
Okay, so we'll start with creation. This will be a little writer's sojourn. So you guys have written books.
You mean Dean and I? Yeah.
Yeah.
We've written a
Yeah.
few books. We even
Right.
wrote a book together.
Even wrote a book together.
Yeah.
That's a deep cut. If anyone did that, only the real fans have
It's
that
on
one.
my bookshelf too, but try and find it.
I think I have one.
You
copy
even have
floating
it in
around.
there somewhere.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I try to get a copy of one. So where to start? So for one, I guess we'll start here. For those who maybe don't know Dean, Dean reads a lot of books.
I do, yes.
And so this book is packed with synopses of other complex books. And I would say, Dean, you can take this however you want, probably as a compliment. But I think no one enjoys a complicated but non-academic book more than you do. Because there are people who read like academic stuff, tomes, textbooks, detailed research. But
He
there's
does
like
those
these,
too.
yeah, sure. But there's these like non-academic stuff that's business process and high level abstraction things. And there's like a whole, I'm trying to find it. There's a page where you like list like here's 10 different complex business processes that you can use to figure out the different you can use this methodology and this test and this thing and that thing. So I don't think I know anyone who really likes like a hard abstract book that's not academic more than you do, and there's a lot of references to those in the books. So that's so just from a writing perspective, I mean, you can't imagine the hours of doing all the reading and then the summarizing of all the different books that are in there. So my question is, for this book, are those just like things you know off to the top of your head that you can just sort of like, yeah. So I'm talking about, this particular thing. Here, I flipped to a random page. You have an essay called "I Pencil My Family Tree," right?
Yes.
Is that something that that you were looking for examples, and or is it just you were just writing the section and you were like, yes, this book I'm going to mention
mention
the
that.
conflict, mention that.
So I think it's a very interesting question. First of all, what I heard in your opening there is that I need a hobby, but that's my,
Wait a
that's
minute,
my
that is you have a
I
hobby.
think you
That
have
well,
a hobby, which is yeah.
maybe I need to get outside more. So I've moved house, but for years I had a fantastic physical space for my
you had a
library.
library.
I had a proper library, and I mean I still have a proper library. It's vertical instead of horizontal now, largely around the house. But it's like 6,000 volumes, so it's not, it's not trivial.
Yeah.
And so like one of the things I'll do is roam the stacks. Um, so I'll get ideas and sort of connect dots that way. That particular thing was a pamphlet that I had picked up years ago in my travels. And it was basically a soliloquy on manufacturing and uh, something that I used in other contexts, but it seemed to suit the purpose that I had in the story that I used. And one of the things that I tried to do, maybe not directly answering your question, but I had for 10 years I did a corporate newsletter, and coming from somewhat of an academic background as a teacher and out of graduate school and everything, I had developed a writing style for business that was admittedly pretty academic. And so when I did this corporate newsletter, I had a marketing guy that we immediately butted heads because he wanted all this fluffy language and, wanted the whole thing
Yeah.
more fun and all these things. And it made me nuts. But I will say that working through that, how the heck are we going to collaborate? Excuse me, made me a better writer. And so the pattern that I developed, I was doing, 1,500 to 3,000 word articles, right, on a regular basis. And the pattern that I developed, rather than using marketing speak in order to make it more interesting, engaging than my former academic writing, was storytelling. So I would bookend the articles with a story, right? I'd find something that was thematically appropriate, and I would use that to introduce the subject. Had nothing to do with the subject half the time, right? But an interesting story is a hook, and often I'd come back to it, or I'd find another story to bookend it. And so I had a lot of at bats through the decade of doing that to develop this style. And so when I sat down to write the book, I had all this information from my business reading and a lot of history. The book's a strategy book, and so the foundation of business strategy is military history. So I had a bunch of that already sort of in my head and in the stacks. But the things like I pencil, I would roam the stacks, or I would do research and find new things to find stories, basically. And so, there's this one story about uh, Hawaiian navigators and outrigger canoes in there in the book, right? Well, that was just a thing that I had recently read on wayfinding, and I thought it was extraordinary. And at a certain point, I'm like, hey, that fits here. So for me, that's like one, trying to keep it engaging, because otherwise I'd be predisposed to write a textbook, right, which nobody wants to read. And then two, it amuses me. So like, that's what I get out of the
So
deal.
that's interesting. So yeah, so it means you're enjoying
Hmm.
at least somewhat the process.
Yeah, I don't think anyone drops more books about uh, design, of just various processes and strategies and um, efficient design and just really high level abstract stuff. It's just
Although, okay,
chapter.
but Guthrie, you gotta mention he's dropping that. However,
Well, and that's the second. Yeah, that's like the follow up question. So,
yeah.
how did you possibly keep the book so tight? Because I mean, I'm writing as nearly as dry, maybe not dry in a boring way, but as I'm working through my new book, I'm writing in a concise way,
Yeah.
which is when I went to law school. the first thing that we did, and one of the things that made me a better writer, was we had a class that was legal writing, and the whole class was like, go write. Here's the thing that you're going to do, and like write all the briefs and just write, articles and all kinds of stuff. And our teacher was, I guess, even a little militant about how you write, and it was very much in like we were in a pendulum swing, whereas there used to be legalese with a lot of heretofores and sort of a fancy way to talk, and that is dead. And you write clean and concise and make your point as fast and as short as possible. And it's a style that I liked, and I've sort of taken it with me. But even then, I mean, I'm blitzing right now past 65,000 words, and the ticker is running,
And you're not done.
and I'm not, I mean, and like it's a great, if you have a complicated bookending things with stories is a fantastic strategy to help explain stuff. um and I'm not really even doing that, all the kind of story fluff is, I'm not talking about Hawaii wayfinding. I'm just trying to get through it. So was
I
it a
think he just said
challenge?
you wrote fluff, Dean.
Well, it's not, no, well,
As long as fluff sells, I'm fine with that.
no, but you know what I'm saying, right?
I
Like
do. I'm just giving you a hard
you
time,
could,
Guthrie.
yeah, right. You could give the concepts without the story, and it would
Yeah,
probably be
but
it would be
and it would be
shorter
a
but
text,
worse.
and it would be a textbook. I think that that's the thing that I arrived at. First of all, I mean, like we've talked about this before, and we talk a lot about it offline. As a musician, sort of in my other life, I actually do have hobbies. Um, you want to literally find your own voice, right? Find your style, and I think it took me the first book, my graduate thesis, a bunch of articles, 10 years of a newsletter, and then, this 65,000 word book to get to the point where I feel like, okay, I'm just beginning to have my own voice and my own style, not exactly overnight. And so I think that, I first of all, I appreciate the kind words, and I want to actually talk about a new exercise that I'm doing in that regard. But the first thing is, like you said, I read a lot. And so there are, in that trying to find your own voice, as much as I read a lot, there are a handful of authors that for me are sort of role models, right? And so I gravitate to people like Steven Pinker, Cal Newport, Daniel Pink, not for the material, but like as writers, right? Malcolm Gladwell, who as a social scientist isn't, he's a journalist, but he's a great writer, right? And I think so. Uh, reading good writing inspires me and kind of gives me role models. That's one thing. The other thing is kind of it takes a village. Thanks to Susan, I got tapped into a network of independent editors, and I put a good team together for this book. And so the final work product, while I'm proud to say was written before AI, so it's not a Chat GPT product. It's mine, but it's mine with getting beaten up by three different editors in three different roles,
Yeah.
for a couple of years, right?
How
Like,
how hard was it to there's for those of you who maybe haven't written a lot, there's nothing harder than writing concise. It's so easy to write long and to just go and go and go and go. It's
well, yeah, what is it? The Woodrow, I think it's Woodrow Wilson. I can't remember who the
so hard to write.
it's,
To,
if you need me to do an hour long speech, I can do it now. If you need 10 minutes, I need a couple of weeks to prepare, right? Like,
yeah.
that's the,
So did you at the end of the process, did you feel, was it real, were you just like, did you feel like in my experience when trying to make something tighter or shorter, the first pass I can cut stuff out, and I can tighten things up and make things concise in a way that's good for the reader.
yeah.
And then if I'm told, hey, it's got to be shorter, I can I try it again, and it's like, okay, it's got to be shorter, right? So like, did you find it a struggle? Did you have to cut a lot? Is there stuff on the cutting room floor that you're like, I wish that would have made it in? Or did you go in like, hey, I'm gonna try to write this just really tight, and it wasn't as much of a challenge?
Yeah, so I thought I was doing pretty well, coming out of the experiences I had had prior. The editors helped me get better, and they definitely made things tighter and more punchy. We had some structural agreements for layout in terms of, based on research, in terms of page count and chapter size. So if you roughly divide things evenly, you don't want a 50-page chapter and a 4-page chapter, right? So there needs to be some symmetry throughout. Excuse me. And so I had some targets. So I felt pretty good about it. And then the story I wanted to tell to like really drive the point home, because we were talking about this before we started the recording. Um, so recently, at the first of the year, I had a New Year's resolution to start promoting the book, because it turned out I didn't write a self-promoting book, and I needed to do some marketing, right? And so I sat down to figure out how I was going to do that. Time's always at a premium, and so I thought, all right, I want to write a blog, but I have this weird thing about, because I'm already working on the next book, and I don't want to cannibalize that. I don't want to cannibalize my book. So this tension between short form and long form is something that I struggle with, again, in terms of trying to find my voice. But I needed some regular blogging, and so what I decided to do, and I'm still in the experimental stage with this, is to create a weekly blog post on LinkedIn. And I looked at the functionality. They have an article function, which is long form, that takes you out of the main post into another thing. And then they have their normal, what is technically just called a post. The post has a 3,000 character limit, about 500 words. So I thought, I'll give that a go. And my first draft of my first one came in at about 1,500 words. So for the last 3 months now, I've been writing roughly weekly to do these 500-word essays, which start out in my head and with the research and everything else as about 1,500 words. And I thought I was lean before. And now I'm like, oh man, I had so much more room to tighten things up, even in the book. If I knew then what I know now, which is not to say like everything would be that tight, because there are places where it's more organic or whatever. But it's a humbling experience to try and get a point across, at least for me, in 500 words, for God's sake.
Yeah, it's and it's a little bit of a trade-off. The more that you tighten things up, the better it is to read, but you do lose some of the nuance of whatever you're talking
For
about.
sure.
There's a flattening there, and sometimes if you're really good, you can make it tight and keep the nuance, but that's where the challenge is. Okay, that's my I am done with the writer's corner.
Okay.
I just wanted to kind of just talk about
Yeah, that's
just
fun. I love that.
just the some of the writing stuff, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And
there's
by the way, Guthrie, I will say that throughout the process that Susan was fantastic. Like I would
Oh, he called for book writers therapy
therapy.
sessions.
Yeah.
He did. He would. He'd like, do you have any time to talk?
Yep. I appreciate that so much, my friend. Thank you.
Well, it's book writing. I love it. I like writing books, but it's not without its challenges. That's for sure.
For
And
sure.
sometimes you need encouragement to keep going. Either that, or a really tight deadline with money behind it will also work.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, encouragement was easier to find. So
all right,
although
let's
although wait,
what
sorry,
what
just one last thing on that about the encouragement, and to
yeah.
piggyback onto Guthrie's question and comments. Another thing that kept me going and kept things sort of tight I had what I called the chapter a week club. I had 4 alpha readers that
Mm,
as I would finish a chapter, I'd send it out
mm,
and then give them a week to respond, while I was drafting the next chapter. And,
mhm.
it was a little squishy time wise, but so I have 4 people who were peers who gave me feedback in that. And
That's nice.
that was really a good practice as well.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the book. So it's, as we know, a 65,000 word book.
Right.
Um, uh,
For those of you who don't know, that's the correct size for a book.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, it's just 60 about 65,000 words. 45,000 is a little short. 85,000,
Too
you're
long,
getting a little long.
right?
So especially for we'll just say like a business trade book.
Yeah.
Dean, I don't know if you do this, but I compare everything to the Harry Potter books.
I do not know.
Right. So Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which is the first book and the smallest one, everyone can picture that kind of book that you have. That's it's about an inch thick, right? So it's good. That's 75,000 words,
Okay. All
right?
right.
You think about some of the longer ones. Order of the Phoenix is 275,000. So
Wow.
well,
Okay.
I mean it's 4 inches thick, so it kind of makes sense.
Wow.
But yeah, but yes, if you just that's my sort of my my guide.
All right. I will keep that in
So
mind.
so the book is, I think, very readable. I think it's really important because I mean, I do a lot of strategy work with my clients, and I see them struggle sometimes with going
Right.
through this thing called strategy. It's like everybody
Mhm.
wants to do it, but what does it mean to do it? And I think you can get mired and lost, and you could start arguing about the process instead of doing the work.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think this book is it's interesting. It's an interesting mix, as you know, Dean, between you know theory and process, but also extremely practical. So it tells you exactly what to do. Um, and I think people really need that. So that's one of my favorite things about it. I'm going to point out a few things, and then I have some questions for you, and then
Sure.
you probably have some things you want to talk about too.
Okay.
All right. On page 138, I always people would do this to me when they were interviewing me, and I
Really?
don't do this to me. Page 138, and I'd be opening the book as though I would remember what's on page 138.
Wait, are you serious? Am I looking at page 138?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's do it.
Page 138, at the bottom,
Uh-huh.
in a little visual design section called key concept, you
Yes.
say you should be able to fashion your strategy in a single statement
Yes.
using a grammar as follows. Our design strategy is to,
Yes.
and then a bracket, strategic approach to design, so that bracket, design outcomes in order to bracket, achieve business objective. So, I mean, to me, I like that's an example. It's really practical. It tells you, hey, when you're all done with all the stuff we're talking about in here, um, or at least not, maybe not all done, but while you're doing it, when you get to the part where you're writing your strategy is, this is what it should. This is how to write it.
Right.
And I think people need that. They need to know, oh, follow this format so that they don't get lost in it. So to me, that was just a small example of, the being practical
Yeah.
that,
Thank you.
that I think is
And
really
that comes
useful.
out of, I pinched that idea from agile story writing, right? So the agile concept of a user story has a grammar. I thought about because I've been through this. The book's a mix of a lot of experience, is focused and honed experience on this topic since 2008.
Yeah.
Um, but also, a lot of research in addition to that. And one of the things that I think is a struggle is how you fashion your elevator pitch, right? And
Very
so
much. Yeah.
as I've had that problem, and so that's why I thought, okay, we can use a format like this for a grammar so that you've got an elevator pitch that is business focused, you know?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that, we all talk about the elevator pitch, but then try and do one for
Yeah,
about anything you're talking about. Just try and do it. And it's like,
right. And this is the trainer teacher in me too. It's like, well,
yeah,
how do you facilitate that? Make it a
right.
magic, you
Yeah.
know? So,
All right. I have another question.
okay.
You mentioned, I don't know the page number. I didn't write it down, but you mentioned that you need to assess both the internal environment in your organization as well as the external environment,
Mhm.
even if you don't control one or both of those.
Yes.
So, can you talk about that a little bit more about how you do that and why that's so important? Even if you don't control it, you still have to assess it.
So, that's page 72. No, I have more. I can't remember. Um, so that's in the first step, which of the process, which is assess the landscape. There's two things. I suppose you could make it a matrix. There's internal and external, and current and future, right? And so this is the pre-work to fashioning strategy. Is you've got to get your arms around the landscape, and there is an internal landscape of your company and everything that's going on there. And the reason that that's important, there's a variety of reasons that that's important, but just to cherry pick a few. One, and I talk about this in the book in terms of a concept called strategic imperatives, is that one of the things that's imperative in creating strategy is you want alignment, right? And so if you're creating a design strategy that is completely out of line with what the CEO wants, then that's not good, right? That's not going to help you sell what you need to do and achieve desired outcomes that are going to be favorable for the company and probably even for your career, right? And so that you're not necessarily going to control, maybe you can eventually influence, depending on the situation, corporate strategy at the top of the house, but it's our job to align with it, right? And so that's one of the issues for the internal landscape assessment. The other is feasibility. You need to know. You might say, let's. I mean, and I've had this happen, right? So just experientially, uh, it's interesting. So I just thinking about how I can juxtapose this. We want to do all the things, right? As designers, we want to do all the design process, have all the different kinds of design, have our component, our pattern libraries, our design systems and all that kind of thing, do gobs of user research. We want all the things all the time. And you can't. And so along with alignment comes focus, and that's another strategic imperative. But every company has a different appetite for certain
Mm.
things. And so you want feasibility. So for example, I was at one commercial software company where I wanted to do all the things, and there was no appetite, for example, for a design system, but it was very, very business focused. I had a great relationship with product management. It was a marketing driven company. They had gobs of money for me for user research because they thought of it as customer research. So I had this wonderful, very robust research program. Well, fast forward to another company where it's like pulling teeth to
Mm.
get user research done, but it's a very progressive, technology-centric company that's willing to pour a bunch of money into a design system and component library. So there's a certain feasibility or path of least resistance or whatever to get some of these constituent parts of an operation that you wanna get in place, and so you have to know what you've got to work with and what, essentially the politics
Yeah,
are in
that's
that.
interesting. And I think that can be so hard because I think a fair number of people in design are perfectionists and they want it all and
Yeah,
they look around and they see what's dysfunctional
right.
and they want to fix all of it. um, so that's probably really wise too. It's like, okay, eh, which does that mean then really when you're talking about design strategy, you're not necessarily talking about the design strategy, you're talking about a design strategy?
100%. And so
Okay.
Roger Martin's one of my strategy heroes. He's a business author, and he talks about strategy is a choice. And actually, one of the things that I talk about in the book, um, there's a specific book that I reference, but it's got sort of a long history, and it's not unlike things that we do in human factors and in UX, and it's the idea of scenario modeling, right? And so if you look at kind of problem solution thinking, you look at what you're up against from a business situation and a design situation as the problem, you might have three different solutions, three different strategies that you can execute, right? And so you develop scenarios for the execution of those strategies,
Mhm.
and you weigh those choices, and then you make an informed decision, often with collaboration with whatever the hierarchy is, or whatnot. You could, I mean, I'm thinking on the fly here, but you might develop, for example, one strategy that could be higher risk and lower quality from a design perspective, but faster to market. And then another strategy that's the inverse of that. What's best for the given situation is the question,
Hmm.
right? And so you have to answer that. And so I've found for me in strategic planning, and I do these workshops, it's just a couple of day workshop, and obviously it's a fast track. But one of the key exercises, three quarters of the way through that workshop, is you get to the point where you have ABC strategies to choose from. And so that's a very powerful technique. But you're absolutely right. It's a choice. You're not trying to discover the lost ark,
You're
right?
not trying
You're
to make
you're
the world better.
creating
Yeah.
opportunities, right?
All right. I'm gonna give you time, Dean, to talk about the things you want to talk about. It's your
Okay.
book. What do you
Wow.
want to talk about?
Yeah.
You had a list.
I have well, of course I have a list.
Oh, right. Yes, you have. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Lists of lists. A couple of things. I will just to kind of set the table a little bit. What is, you mentioned the grammar, but I think the definition of a design strategy is important. One of the things that cracked me up, and it's the same thing in design and in human factors. If you ask 10 experts, you'll get 14 opinions, right? So, when I went through the literature, and when I say the literature, that is largely business strategy, right? Um, what is strategy? Well, strategy is how you do a thing. Well, strategy is not how, it's what. No, strategy is not what, it's why. Well, culture eats strategy for breakfast, like, oh man, like you can't, and these are all Harvard MBAs arguing about what it is existentially. So, I mean, from your writing and your work, sometimes you have to draw a line in the sand and say, this is what I mean by
Right.
whatever the term is. So I'm going to quote myself here on page 14, if we're doing that. Design strategy is a course of action intended to create compelling designs and achieve business results. So that to me is, everything falls out of that definition of what I want to create. And I will say part of the reason I wrote the book is because at the time, there really wasn't any literature on design strategy. Since there's two books, I have a couple of other books. If I can promote other people's books on this,
Oh,
because it's
sure.
interesting. Jamie Levy, UX Strategy, is an interesting book. And then there's a new book, Garkang Wong, who I don't know, The Art of Design Strategy. There's an old book by Karen Donahue called Built for Use that's out of print. But, as far as I can tell, even though there are books with strategy and design in various formats in the title, there's my book and three others, one of which is out of print,
Yeah.
narrowly focused on this. But having read those books, I will say that while they touch on the business perspective, the unique point of view that I bring, in addition to my experience, right, which is organic, um, is that I take a very hard line, business school kind of point of view on this. It's an economic overlay, Right, and this gets back to the whole thing about if we're left to our own devices, we will do all the things, and the good is the enemy of the best. We'll do all these things that are absolutely gonna make better designs, make better products, but they are not guaranteed to move the needle on the business. And so what you wanna do is you wanna look at that intersection between the things that we wanna do for good design and the things that are gonna move the needle on the business, and prioritize those things and align those things and make your choices there. And what that means, and I'll give you a story about this, that's in the book, is that design is not always the hero. Well, sometimes, if you take a release paradigm, some releases it may be, some products it may be, but not all the time. I had a company that I worked for, um, where there was a really interesting opportunity. We were going through a corporate rebrand and a technology platform rewrite at the same time. It was a great opportunity, like the perfect opportunity from a design standpoint to blow it up and start over. Like, I had a blank slate. And so we started with that in mind. We did a prototype that we were very proud of, very progressive prototype. And this product was famously unusable, right? So, we had an opportunity to make it easy to use by having a complete redesign. And we took it out to research to test the prototype, and existing customers hated it. It's the classic install base problem. They had invested so many years in learning it. They didn't want new training. They didn't want all the things. And so what do you do with that? Like, here I have this chance to completely redesign, show my design chops, prowess, all of this, show off the team, all these things, and they hated it. It would have been bad for business. They said they would rather use a competitor's product than relearn how to use this product, right? And so I developed a new strategy, because we also wanted to attract and retain new users who were we knew that they found, when you're new to that, they would find it extremely difficult to use. So the strategy then became twofold. One, since we had new brand anyway, we rebranded it, gave it a facelift cosmetically, but there's some rationale to the aesthetic usability effects, so you can get some merit out of that. And then two, we implemented a really aggressive program of learnability, which isn't, the ideal fix. We know that, right? It's the documentation solution, but more documentation, more training, tool tips, very robust help system, training videos embedded in the product, right? So that we were helping new users, but we didn't change the interaction design and the workflow for existing users, because we made our money off the install base. And so that was not the right answer or the strategy from a design standpoint,
Right.
but it was absolutely the right play from a business standpoint. So
I think I use a lot of software that went through that design strategy, Dean.
right. Yeah. Well, you gotta stay in
And,
business.
and I think a lot of the music software went through that design
Yeah, there's
strategy.
an opportunity there for usability.
All right. What else you got on your sheet?
Well, I will just say, in terms of kind of the thinking of it, uh, the origin story is somewhat interesting,
Mm.
or I think it is. Um, so this began when I took a job at a commercial software company. Um, I was probably on my 3rd day at work, and this is years ago, back when they had magazines, right? And my boss's boss with my boss comes into my office, throws a magazine on my desk and opens it up. This PC magazine. And there's this scathing review of our flagship product and how hard it was to use,
And
right?
this came at, and you hadn't seen this before you took the job.
No, I had not seen it before I took the job. I didn't even know where the restroom was at this point, right? Like, I'm a couple days into coming into this office, and so, he looks at me and says, "What are you gonna do about this?" Right? And I'm like, "Okay." So I scan the article, and it speaks of, like, all basic usability stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh," like, there's a playbook for this, right? What we're
Yeah.
going to do is we're going to do some user research. We'll do
Right.
qualitative and quantitative, find out what the issues are.
Right.
We're going to go through a redesign process. We'll execute that iteratively. We'll do formative research along the way. We'll do some validation metrics at the end so we can prove quantitatively it's better. We're going to implement standards, all the things, right? And so I said, that's what we're going to do. And he seemed satisfied. He said, okay, I want a strategic plan on my desk by next Thursday. I'm like, okay, fine, no problem. So they leave and close the door, and I sit down at my desk and I think to myself, what the hell's in a strategic plan? Like, what in this context, like, what does that really mean? Right? Because again, there's not really any literature on this niche
Right. Right.
application of strategy. So I literally went home and looked at my undergraduate. My undergraduate is in business, and I had a class on strategic planning. I looked at my undergraduate textbook, Thompson and Strickland, on strategic planning, and here are the 13 constituent parts of a strategic plan, right? Okay, fair enough. That gave me a scaffolding. And then it's a matter of, you think about all the best practices that we want to do from a UX perspective, right? And put that into that framework and see what fits, what doesn't, how do you need to massage it, whatever. And I came up with what then was a 7-step process and a model. This is another thing about the book. Since we're doing the page game, maybe I can find it. Maybe I can't. I actually blogged about this fairly recently, but one of the things that I wanted to do as part of this exercise that started with what just happened there was I created a controlled vocabulary, right? And so what does strategy mean? What are goals? What are values? What are objectives, right? And
Yeah.
in all this strategy language. And then, from going to business school and reading business books, you have these terms that then start to make more sense as you're instantiating them for your function, right? What is an intended or deliberate strategy? What is an emergent strategy? All of these things. And so in one of the early chapters of the book, I have a glossary of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so because the terminology, like any other field,
It's
is a
not
mess,
standard. Yeah.
right? And so I still have somewhere I have a picture of the sticky note. I had the little tiny sticky notes on my giant computer monitor in my office, and I had this object diagram relating all of these things. This is a part of that. This is related to that. This breaks down into these two things, and I had that picture. So I created a map and then defined the terms, right? And I don't know that I've seen that anywhere else. You know what I mean? So you know how I get about words.
I know how you get about words and process and mapping, but it's good stuff. Well, I think, all right, here's a now I'm back to asking
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, please.
Here's a basic question. Who is this book for? Who should go get this book?
Yeah. So I would say the primary audience is design leaders. Secondary audience would be executives, right? The people who the design leaders report to, and whatever that context is. And tertiary would be other leaders, peer leaders, product management leaders, engineering leaders, people that need to collaborate with design leaders, and certainly designers as well, obviously. And that is shifting a little bit in some shops with the design and development processes changing so radically with the AI slop that we've got going on. Speaking of processes, but it's a business book for people who are responsible for design but don't come from a business background.
Mm.
It really is a business book. It's more than a design book. And by the way, you can take this process and with pretty obvious modifications, just with a word or two, use it for any kind of strategic planning, right? I blogged about that recently on LinkedIn. That was my New Year's resolution blog. Here's a strategy for getting healthier, right? And I treated it as a personal example, but just to show how those parts fit together.
Mhm.
And one of the other ideas that I present in the book, by the way, along the lines of being able to use this framework for all kinds of strategic planning, is an idea that I call types and levels. So the way I conceptualize it is there are two types of strategy in our environment, right? With what we do. One is the product side, so design strategy for products, and the other is the organization side, right? So you need a strategy, a design strategy for your products, which is going to include all the usual suspects, usability, accessibility, those sorts of things. And then you need a design strategy for your organization so that you have organizational health and maturity and you get to the right scale for whatever that means for your company or your enterprise. And both of those, you can write a strategic plan at any number of levels. So you can have an enterprise level organizational strategy, a team level organizational strategy, right? Even individual level professional development plans and strategies at that level. At the product level, you have products, but you could even do it at the feature level or go up a level to the platform level, right? And so some of the knobs and dials that you have to play with in strategic planning include that granularity, how big or small, and the level of planning, and then also your planning horizon. Is this a 6-month, a 12-month? What's the chronological point of view? And those are important considerations. And obviously, there's a relationship between the organizational strategy and the product strategy. They need to be done, hand in glove.
So, you've worked at a lot of companies, and you've done consulting for different companies. In general, what's the scale of good strategy that you think is out there? Like on a scale from 0 to 10, where 10 is everybody's great at design strategy, everybody knows how to do this, and 0 is nobody's doing this. Where do you think the world sits right now?
I think it's pretty low. I mean, again, how do you conceptualize it, right? So I'm conceptualizing design strategy as being value driven. You're
Yeah,
trying,
I mean, I'm assuming using
yeah,
your framework, your definitions, the way your book says, "Hey, here's a good way to do it." How many people how many organizations are doing that?
it's like
Really small, right?
that's a really small number. I mean, the places I've worked over the last couple of decades, because I was doing
Because you were there.
right, and then a few affiliates. I mean, I've
Right,
been
right.
blessed to have build leadership teams where they
Yeah,
go
yeah.
to other places. But by and large, when people in our industry say design strategy or UX strategy, they mean a plan. They mean a plan for
Right,
achieving a good design,
right,
which you have to look to other literature, business literature, product management literature, to get to that value
right,
driven
right.
paradigm. And it's not mutually exclusive. I'm not eschewing good design by any means. I spent a
Right.
couple of chapters. I spent one chapter talking about the qualities of compelling design and enumerating those and describing those, because that's the goal, in as simplified a context as I could in one chapter, right? And then I spent another chapter talking about the process to achieve good design. So those things get baked into it as well. But the overarching concern is maximizing business value. We need to make and or save money for the companies that we work for in a commercial context. That's the goal, right?
Yeah. So, all right.
I
Guthrie,
have a, yeah, I have
do
a
you have a
question.
question? Yeah.
I
Okay.
do. So yeah, I do have a question, uh, and it's sort of like a UX into product question,
Mhm.
because I think there's sort of a sense that there's a UX process that exists in companies,
Mhm.
and you in some ways UX kind of was first because it was around since like the 90s or whatever, but there were software processes that existed sort of at the same time.
Yes.
and the software processes were able to like break containment
Right. Right.
and become the organizational process for product or design or like the whole company or whatever. So
Yeah.
whether that's like design thinking or agile, really those two.
Right.
It started as a process at a niche level, and then but was able to grow into basically like you can run your whole like large swaths of the company follow this. This is the process that we follow.
Yeah.
And UX could have done that. I don't think that the UX processes necessarily uh, UX processes could probably be translated to work across huge sections of an organization the same way that Agile could,
Right.
maybe I guess, but they sort of never did, and so um, uh, that's sort of a long kind of preamble because we're talking here about, I mean, in theory, I mean, these are ideas and strategies that can work across broad segments of the
Mhm.
business, right? Would you agree with that?
Well, for sure. I mean, so two things. One, the strategic planning process, is, I mean, it's based on good strategic planning from a business textbook. So it obviously has broad application, right?
Yeah.
Up a level of abstraction. And I will say, again, because of the gap in the literature, if the language in business is functions, right? So product management is a function, design is a function, engineering is a function, right? Marketing is a function, et cetera. And so you have these functions, and there's a long history in business planning of functional strategies. So this fills a gap because there's stuff that exists for the other
Yeah.
functions. This fills a gap for design as a functional strategy. But the three, and I talk about this in the book, there's I don't know, probably six or so manifestations of some kind of Venn diagram in our industry of what are considered kind of the core functions for making software, right? And so
Mm.
you've got the business point of view, typically represented by product management these days. You've got the technology point of view, typically represented by engineering, and then you've got the design point of view, typically represented by UX. And so sometimes that's called three in a box, and there are a lot of different versions of that. I tried to find, I'm big on provenance. I try to find the origin stories of these things, and I'm pretty good at that research. That one in particular was a little bit elusive, and it's the kind of thing that a lot of people claim. Um, you know, like Abraham Lincoln said on the internet that whatever, and so you can't believe everything that
Yeah.
you read there. But I talk about it as three lenses, and my perspective is that there are three key points of view in making software. You've got product management, UX, and development. Those three lenses I talk about in the book in terms of strategy making. The other half of strategy is implementation or execution. Like you have to actually do the thing, right? And so those three lenses, those three functions also have their own historic process architectures. It's their
Okay.
point of view.
So yes, I'm gonna pause you because
Yeah.
I know where you're going, and I want to ask the question so that I want to like set it up so that you can then finish the thought.
Okay.
So, um, and unfortunately, I have to start with the Carl Sagan preface
Yes.
to the Hawking book
Okay.
on general relativity. And
Uh-huh.
he tells a story that is plenty famous
Uh-huh.
where I believe he was attending a lecture in Cambridge,
Uh-huh.
and the lecture was about, kind of, how atoms worked and
Uh-huh.
general relativity or whatever. And he was either maybe after the talk, and a sort of an older woman kind of comes up and says, that you sound very smart, young man, but everyone knows
Uh-huh.
that either the world or the universe or the solar system, whatever it is, just sits on the back of a giant tortoise.
Sure.
And the lecturer goes, but what does the tortoise sit on?
Right.
Right. And she
Right.
said, very clever, young man, but it's just tortoises all the way down.
Right.
Okay. So it's just one of my, I just love that sort of like, it's just like, it just goes on forever of just like these giant tortoises.
Right.
So I'm looking,
I don't
for
know where
example,
he's going with this.
yeah. I know. So like on 41, right?
Oh, we got enough.
Here, yeah,
page
you don't, but it
reference.
doesn't matter. The page numbers don't matter.
We're going to go look.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Okay, having said,
Go on.
at a high level, here are the 5 things that you need in a process to ensure a compelling design, right? We have
Okay.
generative research, requirements, analysis, design, and evaluative research.
Yeah.
And so, I looked in the index, and there's not and it's not in the index at all, the phrase user-centered design. And so it's sort of like, I wonder if you feel this is like at all true, that in your like unconscious, you your entire universe sits on top of UCD. And it's just like, it's UCD. So instead of tortoises, it's UCD all the way down. And that sort of, even though it's not mentioned, like springing up from the cracks, like the foundation of like the universe is like the user-centered design process throughout all of this.
Young man,
And-
did you skip the preface?
Because the preface?
The preface clearly states anything that is designed should be made using a human-centered approach, including products, services, and organizations.
Well, so exactly. So the UX was never able to escape the confinement box, right? And become a process that was used in a broader sense across the organization. And yet there seems to be, and it's not just this book, other processes that are, hey, UCD, which isn't even used by UX teams anymore, right? Or officially, like I don't think I know. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know if I know a single team that just is like, UCD is our official design process. It's usually some combination of something, and you probably know more teams than I do. But it's, most UX teams are doing some sort of agile something or design thinking something. So there, like, do you feel that in some, like, that there's this UCD foundation, and that in some of the ideas in here, and some of the other, I guess mostly maybe newer ideas in design strategy in general, are like UCD, this UCD foundation flowing into other parts of the business in sort of a similar way that, the ideas of lean manufacturing sort of flowed into software engineering, and now is flowed into design and agile and all this sort of these other kind of like lava through the cracks. Does that question make any sense at all?
No, but it was interesting.
Okay, good.
I'm going to run with it. So I'm going to give you a couple of nuggets here. One is that process that is the UCD process that I talk about in the book.
Yeah.
You can use. So I teach at Arizona State University. I've been teaching there for years. I teach a product design and evaluation class and a human computer interaction class. And this is the process that I use in that class. And you can use it as a step-by-step process for UX design, user-centered design, whatever we want to call it. That's a whole other thing. The labels that we use for these things. I think in terms of human-centered design is sort of the terra firma. But what GRADE is, those steps that you mentioned, is to me a set of heuristics. I'm not trying to say this is the process you should follow.
Right.
It's 5 things you need to check for with whatever your process is. If you're using double diamond, design thinking, contextual inquiry, some bespoke thing, whatever, does it have some kind of generative research, right? Are you getting proper user requirements into the process? Are you doing some level of analysis, task analysis, or go back to that OOUX series that we did on this podcast, right? That sort of analysis. Obviously you have to design the thing. You don't just want code and fix, which is starting to happen again in this AI focused world, and then some sort of evaluative research, right? So it's more of a meta process and a check that you can say, whatever you're doing, does it have those elements to it? And so that was the original intention when I cooked that up. The process point of view and this whole thing about the proliferation of agile or other processes, and maybe people in our field not getting the stickiness or getting our processes to be as pervasive as possible, I think kind of misses the point. And that's one of my big beefs. Going back to that three lenses description in the Venn diagrams that you see, three in a box or whatever. I think that's misguided. And so what you've cleverly done, Guthrie, without realizing it, is teed up my second book that I'm already working on process. So the follow-up to this is all this process stuff. And my perspective on that is this, that while there are many processes that impact software design, those three lenses effectively in contemporary space, product management, UX, and engineering, that the problem is we have, if you go back to ATN Winger and social science theory, we have these communities of practice, and they all have this tunnel vision about here's how you make a product, and they're all focused and selfishly centered on their point of view and their perspective. The designers think about all the designerly stuff. Design thinking, by the way, isn't strategy, and it doesn't go to implementation. It just goes to prototyping. So it's only a small slice of the picture, right? The agile stuff shows you how to build things, but depending on what version you're following, other than SAFe, the Scaled Agile framework, which has some interesting, for lack of a better word right now, UX-y design thinking sorts of things built in, that's not prescribed, right? The product management frameworks, you look at the pragmatic framework and other frameworks and methodologies for product management, they may have a nod to design, but nothing ever completes the bite. And none of those are integrated or holistic. So I think the problem is the siloed way of thinking. And I have done a lot over the years. And Susan and I worked at a company together where she was, the best boss I ever had. And I got an opportunity to do a little bit of this consulting work on process engineering because my master's degree is software engineering. So I have been knee deep in software process forever. And as a person coming out of a design orientation in that world, this very problem made me nuts, right? So part of my body of work is I actually have a methodology for process engineering to integrate and harmonize all of those processes together, and then B, to optimize them as one holistic thing, right? And what's under the tortoise is business process management. If you look at the BPM field and fields like that, these are just business processes. You have a business process for everything that you do, from accounting to marketing to manufacturing to product development. Well, I think it's management malpractice if you're looking at those things that are critical to putting out a software product and you're not harmonizing those, right? But now, to be fair, not a lot of people come at it with experience or expertise in those three different areas. So we end up working in silos, and there's a lot of what I talk about in the book as friction, right? That's the strategy term for things like that. Those problems are referred to in military planning as friction. And so our whole universe is rife with friction because we have these three lenses and everybody's only looking through their one lens. We need to stop that and harmonize everything.
Yeah, I asked Susan a while back, why does she think that as a structural process, like UCD has somewhat fallen by the wayside? And she had a couple answers, but one of her answers was that it's sort of so intuitively obvious that when you come across a problem, you should do some research ahead of time and then figure out what you need to do, and then do it, and then check back later to see if it's working. Like in some ways, there is an intuitiveness to UCD that is sort of becoming that, you can call the tortoise with some glue that you can sort of apply in other steps, or that maybe that UCD just b- borrowed from your tortoise, which is like the basic kind of business. I forget would you say business process. Um, I don't know if that was the exact phrase you used.
Business process management. And,
Yeah,
all
business
this,
process management. So I think as some of these systems and processes get automated, especially with AI stuff, which I do not want to talk about. But there is more. It feels like people are looking for some cohesive, grand strategy that ties these worlds together,
Mhm.
so that you don't have to be hopping. Because one thing, you have those three lenses. One thing, if the lenses kind of work together, like, I mean, I know that they literally work together, but they're pretty different lenses. Like, it's not. I guess in my opinion, it's like one lens really looks at things quite differently than the other lens, and you need all the lenses to do it
So
all.
the story I talk about in the book is I actually I'm not wearing them now so that I can see you guys since we're on camera, but I have trifocals, right?
Yeah,
And so, it's one set of glasses with three different focal points. And so that's the paradigm shift, right? Is that we need to harmonize and integrate these things so that we don't have those silos, so that we're not looking through different lenses. And this process engineering framework that I have does that. And I've seen tremendous success in the few companies that I've been able to implement that. And it can be done, but nobody's doing it. And all these things, by the way, come back at the most abstract level. I go back to the TQM days, and it's the Shewhart cycle: plan, do, check, act, right? And so that's roughly what
yeah.
all of this stuff is from a business perspective.
Yeah, I've just been trying to figure out what the tortoises all the way down is, and maybe it's that, or there's like some like ancient universal like quark level business process
Mhm.
that is some sort of like uh, building block of matter, that exists, that in theory you could start with and then build all your processes out of that same thing, and they would kind of harmonize together because they were all built out of the
All
same
right, I'm
matter.
gonna I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell you two that if you two ever worked on a book together, it would I don't know that it would ever get done, and the editor would go running screaming.
In my preface, it would say that you have to like start by dosing yourself with something before you can
No, that's
comprehend
not a
the
good idea.
the
Anyway,
comprehend.
um, we are out of time. Uh, Dean, thanks so much for coming to talk to us, and thanks for writing this book.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I definitely recommend it. So if you are a design person, if you're a design leader, I think if you're just a designer and
For
want
sure.
to know how you could maybe talk to some of the people around you who are trying to do strategy and influence them, I think it would be a really good book to have. It's only 65,000 words, as we have determined, and so it's just the right size, just like the first Harry Potter book. That's what I would say. Um, Dean, if people want to buy the book or they want to get a hold of you, what are good ways to do that?
Well, if you want to buy the book, it's on Amazon. It's only in soft cover right now. I am in the process of proofing the Kindle version.
Okay.
And then next up after that is an audiobook. And then if they can just find me on LinkedIn or just deanbarker.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Guthrie, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. See you
Thanks,
late.
guys.
See you soon, Dean.
Love you both. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers.